Welcome to the Marshall Pruett podcast and our Week in IndyCar show. Our man Brian Barnhart, former IndyCar president, former IndyCar chief steward, now the president of Harding Steinbrenner Racing, gives us some great updates about their plans moving forward. Not everything is cast in stone, but definitely some insights on the process they are currently involved in. Had about half an hour or so with Brian, actually between interviews with their team members to try and decide what might happen next season as Harding Steinbrenner Racing is folded into Andretti Autosport under the Andretti Harding Steinbrenner banner. Also have a fun, background story behind Brian's "Give me four good ones" line, the fairly famous one that he would deliver to each Indy 500 qualifier. A little bit of background as well from Brian about whether he would want to punch some of us in the media for things we've said in the past. All kinds of great stuff from Brian. Again, didn't have a lot of time here, but we definitely plan on having him back, and very gracious of Brian to make time for us here. As always, I want to say thank you to our partners at Cooper Tires, also to the Justice Brothers, definitely to TorontoMotorsports.com and Bell Racing Helmets USA, all four who make our little podcast possible on a weekly basis as I watch our cat Rosie jumping up on my temporary desk here, biting a lot of things. Thanks, Rose. So that's about all I have for you here. I've already posted our listener Q&A. It's about 2.5 hours worth, all the goodies you sent in via social media for us, in particular for me. And so you might give that a listen, give you a little bit more insight and depth on a lot of things there leading into that show. But for this week, just going to keep it really tight and efficient. So let's get going with our man, Brian Barnhart. About 30 minutes of fun, brought to you by Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, TorontoMotorsports.com, and Bell Racing Helmets USA here on the Marshall Pruett podcast and our Week in IndyCar show, available at all times on MarshallPruettPodcast.com. Brian Barnhart, thanks so much for making time. Well, this isn't your first appearance on my podcast, but I believe this is your first on my Week in IndyCar show. You're calling us during a busy day in Indianapolis. Lots of things happening there. First of all, you still soaking in the joy of whooping everybody's butt to close the season in Monterey?
Well, thanks for having me, Marshall, and thanks for reminding me of that memory, because it is still fresh enough, and perfect weekend all the way around, with the open test on Thursday and the practice sessions and getting the pole, sweeping the race and leading 83 out of 90 laps as the season finale race. You literally cannot envision a better way to wrap up a season and head into the off season other than thinking about how perfect that weekend was all the way around.
Got you for just about 30 minutes, and that's because, again, you are busy there at the Harding Steinbrenner Racing home front. A ton of great questions for you, so I figure let's get cracking, get through as many as we can. A couple of these are actually right on that exact topic, really looking to the future. I think a lot of folks really came to love themselves some Harding Steinbrenner Racing, so we'll start here with Mark Pesky, who says, in last week's podcast with Colton Herta, he mentioned several team members of his current program will be making the jump to Andretti Autosport. He asks, does this include driver coach Al Unser Jr.? And if so, is little Al working for Michael Andretti one of the signs of the apocalypse? So I know that's a very specific question on little Al. And we've got another question here from Neil Joseph asking you what it's like working again with little Al, knowing that you worked with him back in the day, driver-mechanic relationship. But let's maybe open this up a little bit wider, since it is probably the biggest topic at hand. We know that Colton is headed to Andretti in a 5th full-time entry. We know that some of the current team are headed there. What can you tell us about how this transition process might go? If you have any idea on how many people might make the move from HSR to Andretti Autosport and the Andretti Harding Steinbrenner entry coming in 2020, I know it's really been the main topic of things you've been working on since you've gotten back.
Well, to be honest with you, it's really something that has kind of come out of nowhere and caught us off guard, because the original plan that was created in 2018 with this partnership, when it was envisioned, it did not contemplate taking the Harding Steinbrenner car in-house at Andretti Autosport in 2020. It was not part of the original plan to do so. It was designed to be a 3-year relationship with Andretti Technologies, where Harding Steinbrenner Racing really was a development program, and we were focused on developing personnel. We were focused on developing components. We were focused on developing relationships, sponsors, whatever, and looked at that being a 3-year program. And it did not, as I say, contemplate that after only 1 year of existence, this thing's now going to take the Harding Steinbrenner operation in-house at Andretti Autosport. So it's been accelerated mainly because of our successes with this program, which was a fairly unique concept and program that in its first year really showed how creative it was and how successful it could be, to the point where it clearly attracted the attention of other people, specifically towards Colton, who did nothing short of a magnificent job in the race car. We kind of scratched the surface. If you go back to Sonoma in 17 or in 18, when we ran Pato and Colton there, and Pato made the Fast Six, and you kind of had the idea that this thing in 19 might be pretty cool, but I still don't think anybody envisioned it being as successful as it was this year. Colton excels, and then all of a sudden becomes kind of a wanted man with the Schmidt McLaren deal, and was getting wooed by other people, even though he had a contract, but there was options for him to go other places. So the merger of Harding Steinbrenner and Andretti is accelerated by our successes, and protecting the investment in Colton Herta and keeping him long-term in what will amount to the Andretti family through the new proposed relationship of Andretti Harding Steinbrenner Racing. So it's an accelerated program. That's long-winded to try and get to your point of there's so many details associated with the logistics move, the parts, the people, everybody from management people to driver coaches like Little Al to the shop floor guys. Andretti has been spectacular. Rob Edwards and Michael and JF have all said, everybody's going to get an opportunity to be interviewed and apply for positions moving up there. They've got a lot of programs under that roof now to begin with Rallycross and with multiple Indy Lights programs and with multiple IndyCar programs. So the personnel is a little bit of a tricky one, because they're going to want to promote from within. They're going to give people other opportunities off of those other programs. And that's the other thing, that the success gives you the opportunity to pick and choose the best of the best and make each program, each of what will be the 5 cars under that roof, as strong as they can be with the best people on each of them. So we're just now into that process. We did a couple of interviews before we went to Laguna. Most guys took the week off after Laguna for some vacation time, and we've been continuing the interviewing process with everyone on the shop floor and getting an opportunity of where they see themselves, partially explaining the difference between being a little 1-car team and moving into a larger, more corporate environment with multiple sponsors and 5 cars and other programs under one roof and just how small team versus big team function and operate, and just kind of going through that process with all the people. So it's very complicated, time consuming, and one of the biggest challenges is before you even get into the equipment transition, with the race cars that we have, and whether it's tractors and trailers or sub-assembly parts and brakes and gearboxes and wings and bodywork and spring inventory and shocks and all that stuff. It's going to be a lot of paperwork and a lot of detail-oriented work over the next month for sure.
Guess the take-home point here, which it's overstating the obvious, but I know that there were efforts, can't say how ongoing they were, but I know that there were efforts to look around and say, hey, if Colton were to move to Andretti or even another team before all that was finalized, what might Harding Steinbrenner Racing do in terms of possibly working with a different driver next season if that was the need to keep the team going? At least the plan as it is right now is in this merger between Harding, Steinbrenner, and Andretti. The current HSR team, the number 88 Honda per se, we're not expecting to see this car on track with the team operating independently going forward. That would be an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's going to be, that's going to be better for all parties. As stated, it's clearly, a desire to keep Colton. Brian Hurt has a long-standing relationship with Michael, and Colton has come out of the gate, way better than anyone could have ever imagined, and way more successful in terms of his racecraft. And, so Michael's excited to provide that opportunity to Brian and Colton and keep Colton in the Andretti family. So that's a great thing. But it's also in reality the right thing for Mike Harding as well. We're looking forward to continuing the relationship with George Steinbrenner that we had this year. We're looking forward to expanding our relationship, not just with Andretti Technologies, but now with Michael Andretti and Andretti Autosports. So that's great. But it's also the right thing for Mike Harding. You look at Mike Harding as an individual, and he's been more dedicated and has probably persevered as an IndyCar owner without major sponsorship longer than any other individual that I've ever seen. And that speaks to his dedication and his commitment to keeping this thing up and going and keeping guys on the payroll and running this thing without sponsors. We thought we had a decent in-season relationship developed with a company that didn't come to fruition, and it really was just a setback. And Mike just kept plugging away and doing it all on his own. And we ended up getting a little help from Toronto on from the Capstone Turbine Corporation, and they were a great little help to us, and really one of the biggest reasons we were able to finish the season this year was them stepping up to the plate. And that's why this relationship moving forward is the right thing for Mike Harding as well, because the new proposed relationship between Michael Andretti, Mike Harding, and George Steinbrenner is by far the better financial responsible position for Mike Harding to take as well.
Absolutely. We have a question here from Paul Kruper. On a more personal front, he says, Brian, is your position secure within the new team structure? And he also says, my compliments on what you have been able to do with so little money with the, or comparative, so little budget compared to some of the other teams. So curious, have you had to interview yourself and ask you if you know anything about big team corporate structures? Kidding aside, but do you have a feel for what your future might look like as the HSR team is blended or merged in some capacity into the Andretti Autosport ship?
No, not really. And that's one of the things that it is, along with everybody else, that will be discussed and talked about moving forward. It's a little bit more of a challenge of, one of the economies of scale of running multiple car teams is you don't replicate management. So that is a bit of a struggle for my position of where we're at, because Andretti Autosport is very well staffed with J.F. Thorman and Rob Edwards and Josh Freund and Paul Ziggy Harkus. They've got a lot of great people up there right now. So, on a personal level, I certainly will do everything I can. My responsibility as it currently sits is to make sure I do the best I can for Harding Steinbrenner Racing. And when this merger takes place physically and moves inside that building up there, I'll just try and do whatever I can to hopefully have a place to fit in up there and be as good a team player as I can be and add value to whatever that might be.
Let's get into a little bit of fun here. We got a couple of fun questions. I wanted to move this one towards the top because it made me laugh. This came in from our friend Jameen Tuttle, who said, Brian, did you ever have the urge to knock one of Robin Miller's teeth out when you worked for IndyCar? And he also asks, what was the best driver meltdown you saw over one of your decisions? Was it Will Power, Helio Castroneves? And I'll modify that a little bit. Just say, Jameen, I don't know why you think Brian would want to stop knocking out Robin's teeth just because he, now that he no longer works for IndyCar. I think that's a consistent thing for most of us. Robin's got a job to do, and whatever he felt he needed to do to do his job, that's certainly his prerogative and his choice to do so. One thing that people would probably be surprised to know is old timers like Robin and I, we both share the same passion for the sport of open wheel racing. And, you may not always agree on what is in the best interest of that moving forward, but it isn't out of a lack of caring. And we both want nothing but the best for our chosen career in our fields and for open wheel racing to be as successful as it can be. We just occasionally disagreed on how the best way might be to get there. So, I think if there was anything I would say, I think there was maybe a couple of times I wish Robin might not have been as personal as he seemed to get. He didn't always have the facts, and I'm sure I'm guilty of that as well. So we don't want to lay this solely on Robin's feet. So
the personal attacks were a little difficult. If your kids had come home from school and say that somebody at school said something or that their parents said something, and that's where they're getting it from, that was probably the most frustrating aspect of it. But other than that, Robin and I have a very good relationship. People may not think that would be the case based on previous, but because we've known each other for so long and have that shared passion towards our industry, we actually get along very well and have a good relationship. So no, I don't think I'd go so far as to say I ever thought about knocking a tooth out or two.
Well, there's time. That's all I'm saying. There's time.
Foyt was the guy that pulled his hair and slapped him around. Foyt takes care of that.
Yeah, he was kind of working for the paddock there. So maybe we might have to get AJ to step up when needed here again. We got two questions, similar, one from Simon Rafi, the other one from Jordan Darwin. He says, Brian, how have you found life after going from gamekeeper to poacher? Talking about your transition from being not only the president of IndyCar, but also race director. He says, do you still find yourself judging race incidents as though you were still an official? And are there any incidents or penalties you think you might have judged differently? And then Jordan says, can you compare and contrast some of the pros and cons of being on the series side versus back on the team side?
Yeah, that one's probably the easiest. It's absolutely, when you're on the team side, you are individually focused. You are looking at every decision on how it affects you and you only, and the results of your car, your team, your driver. That's all that matters to you. You don't even think twice about big picture decisions or how things are handled at that point in time. You are solely focused on what is in the best interest of Harding Steinbrenner Racing. And that obviously is the other end of the spectrum. When you're on the sanctioning body side, you are more focused on big picture items and the fairest of what it is for all competitors, and you balance everything from safety to competition to television, to sponsors, to fans, blah, blah, blah. And it is, it's definitely night and day difference in where you're at. I do think my nearly a quarter of a century on the sanctioning body side was very helpful when we do our pre-event strategy meetings and talk about what they're likely to do, the history of knowing these racetracks and where, potential local yellows can take place, where you're likely to go full course caution if a car gets off and plan for that. But it is definitely opposite ends of the spectrum, singularly focused versus big picture, no doubt.
Let's go to, we're going to wind down here. Just again, you're a busy man, so I do appreciate you making some time. Let's go to Ed Berg. This is a fun one. A little bit of a history, maybe. It says, Brian, what's the story behind your, quote, give me 4 good laps on TV during qualifying? He says, I think some people might figure it was self-promotion, or like Ed, he says, thought of it as a bit of an endearing kind of win one for the Gipper, kind of cheer the person on. So curious where that came from.
All right, so I'll give you guys a little background on that story there. And I used to, I thought in my previous role, the relationship that I had with drivers, felt very responsible for them and their safety and their well-being, and was very close with a good number of those drivers. And when you get ready to qualify at Indianapolis, it is such a unique qualifying experience. It is a 10-mile run. You are on the highest speed track with the most narrow margin of error of any track that we run. You are running in a configuration that you only run, a very small percentage of the time, even though you're practicing in Indianapolis for 50 hours a month or whatever it is. There's only the one time that you truly trim that car out and put it on such a nervous edge, and you then have to hold your breath for, I don't think people fully understand and appreciate how harrowing that experience is of qualifying for 10 miles. And
sure.
Having done that for a number of years, it was literally a little surprising to me sometimes, the look on some of those drivers' faces. I'll put it to you, one time when we first started doing the concept of, when we did away with the, once a qualifying run's been run to completion, that car's done, and only 3 attempts, when we gave basically unlimited attempts and multiple attempts on that thing. I remember Dario came through, and after posting a time, and he came through a second time to run, Dario looked up at me and he goes, I hate you. I could just tell what he's talking about. It's like exactly what I'm saying. That's the most nerve-wracking and harrowing experience, and then doing it multiple times, certainly under that consideration. And so there was this one time that Michael was back, and it was back when they were kind of paired up with Panther Racing and Sam Hornish, and Michael was in jeopardy of not making the show. And again, there's probably not very many people that I have more respect for than Michael Andretti. In and out of the race car, the stuff that he was able to accomplish as a driver is incredible. But then his support, again, of open wheel racing, everything from being a multi-car owner and running extra cars at the Speedway and promoting events, and kept Danica in the series when it was the right thing to do, and all that kind of stuff. So Michael's got a pretty special place for me as well. And I looked down at him, and he kind of had a deer in the headlight look, getting ready to go out and try and qualify. And I leaned down into the cockpit and had a very personal, conversation with Michael, hoping to build his confidence and wish him the best to be in the race, and said something along the lines of, you got this, we need you in the show, you're blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And apparently some television cameras picked up on it. And then television came and said, oh, that was beautiful, and we want you to wear a microphone all the time. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't really want to do that. First of all, I never want any of that to ever be about me. And that was also, oftentimes a very personal relationship and conversation that I would have with those guys. Some guys needed kind of a kick in the rear, and some guys needed a pep talk.
Sure.
You want all guys to be safe, and you want all guys to be successful. And so depending on who they were and what their personality was, I tried to give them what they needed based on who they were. And when they put a microphone on me, then it was kind of like, you guys are not going to get what you're saying you like, because now what was once a very personal and private and individual moment between me and that driver, I now got to say the same thing to every driver. And I'm not going to give anybody,
give me 4 good laps. Give me 4 good laps.
So it was
3. I might be able to get 3 out of you, pal. So aim for 3. We'll see how the 4th works out.
3 good ones out of you and 1 mediocre is best I'm hoping for you. So it became more methodical, and to make sure, because then the last thing I wanted is that's now going to be on TV. I don't know, he's playing favorites or doing it. It's like, no, I'm just trying to. I wish them all nothing but success, and some of them before the microphone would get it in a different version than after the microphone. After the microphone, it had to be the same routine, the same thing said every time. And so, sorry.
No, hey, look, this is an adult show. It's all good.
You kind of run out of things to say to them and how to do it. And it's like, okay, pull right off the racetrack, green flag, second time by, 4 laps to completion. Give me 4 good ones. That's my best way of saying good luck to you. I'll
take a number 2 of cheese, large Dr. Pepper. You should have just had fun with it. That's all I'm saying here. Well, yeah. Let's get to just 1 or 2 more. Again, I know we got to get you back. You've got actually more interviews to do, so we're not joking when we say you're calling in between busy work here. Let's go to our friend IndyCar, who says, Brian, will fans ever get the tell-all on Guess and Capstone in 2019? And you've mentioned Capstone, which I know myself and Robin and others have praised highly for stepping up. Does this go into the autobiography that goes into the sealed crypt that says, do not publish until I croak?
Well, no, I mean, I'll try not to violate anything or say something I shouldn't say here. It's just that what we thought was going to be a very good sponsorship relationship didn't pan out, and there was a lot of promised deliveries of funding that for the most part never took place. We got a couple of small initial hits from them, and then nothing materialized after that. So it was very disappointing that it didn't pan out, because it had a lot of potential that we thought it was going to be structured a little bit like a program, kind of like the Target vendor program was for a number of years on there. So I guess to me, it's a shame the Guess relationship didn't pan out. The good news is that it did lead us to the relationship with Capstone.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Krause and everybody associated with the Capstone Turbine Corporation. Like I said, we wouldn't have made it from Toronto to the end of the year without their help and assistance. And especially the way the 88 car finished the season, the last 2 races with a win, 2 poles, and a 4th place. I think a lot of momentum out of that car, and also a lot of momentum with the relationship with Capstone. And hopefully that's another relationship that can transfer into the Andretti Autosport building next year when we get together. So hopefully that can continue to grow and expand that relationship as well.
Everybody go and buy yourself some Capstone turbines. So we got a bunch of other questions, some of them on Loudon 2011. We'll save those for a future episode. I just thought it might be fun to...
a little recap on Loudon. Don't try and restart in the rain.
Or just keep going in the rain. I think one of the two. We'll save that for a future visit, but I would love to close here with a final question that I just thought would cap things perfectly. Comes in from Andrew C. Says, Brian, what's your favorite Rick Gallis story? And do you know what Mr. Gallis is up to nowadays? And you ever see him around the paddock?
I haven't seen Rick in a number of years. And I'll go back to, so at Gallis, Alan Merton was the lead engineer, and with little Al and Rick talking to him on the radio. And at Indy in 92, obviously the cold temps and all the incidents that were taking place, probably about halfway through the race, we're under caution for one of those, and Rick comes on the radio and says to Al, Goodyear says these accidents are all happening because of the cold temperatures in the tires. And you could kind of see all of us as crew members cringe like, oh my God, he didn't just say that. And Al Jr., so it's an adult show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Al Jr. comes back on the radio and says, no shit, Rick, you think I'm stupid?
Oh, that sounds very much like a little Al response.
Yeah, and you could kind of, everybody kind of looked over at Rick, and you could kind of see him kind of sheepishly like, well, I had to say it.
Al, the Goodyear says the rain falling on the track is making it somewhat slick as well. We just want to share that with you there. Casey.
Back to the old radio program they used to have here in Indianapolis with Bob and Tom.
Yeah.
They used to do Mr. Obvious. That'd have been a perfect. Well, thanks, Mr. Obvious.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, Brian, thanks as always for making some time. I know you're in the midst of, it can't be super fun knowing you're having to work on consolidating the breakout team, the absolute breakout team of the season, into a new home for some of that team. But nonetheless, we'll look forward to hopefully having you on here a little bit later in the year, and we'll catch up on more fun.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity here, and it's definitely something I take a great deal of pride in on a personal level as well as the team level, like you say. And in a series as competitive as this one is, with a lot of really professional race teams and talented engineering and driver combinations, to be able to accomplish what we've accomplished in such a short period of time here is truly remarkable. It's a real testimony to the nature of the technological relationship that we put together, but it also is a testament to the people that we put together here, from Colton and the crew guys and their execution on the racetrack. It's something to be really proud of when you look at a seventh place in the points. And, when you look back at the season, there was only two cars that had more success in terms of combined wins and poles than we had. We had 2 wins and 3 poles for a total of 5. And Newgarden had 4 wins and 2 poles for 6. Pagenaud had 3 and 3. And when those are the only 2 cars that beat you and they finished first and second in the points, that's pretty incredible for a little startup one-car team to be able to accomplish what we did this year. So we take a great deal of pride in it.
Sandwiched between a Chip Ganassi Racing entry and an Andretti Autosport entry, ahead of all the Rahal Letterman Lanigan entries, Dale Coyne, Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, Ed Carpenter Racing, AJ Foyt Racing. Yeah, not so bad there, Coach.
Yeah, not so bad. We're really proud of it. And again, thanks for the opportunity to join you here. My best to you and everything you got going on as well. And anything I can do for you in the future, just let me know.
Thank you, my friend.